is up, ladies and gentlemen? Thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg, and we had an electric start to NBA trade week today. Even though the trade deadline is on Thursday, we got some massive news today, and it sounds like we may have massive trades coming down the pipeline. We're going to be covering as many of these trades as possible, especially if, a Darius Garland, James Harden trade happens or a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade happens. There's so much to talk about with those coming forward, but today we got two trades that I really want to focus on, with Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Utah Jazz and the Boston Celtics Chicago Bulls making a swap of players. We're going to break down how I think this looks for both teams and what I like and what I don't like about these trades. Before we do, take a second to subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're covering a ton of NBA trade content, but we're also covering the games. Tonight we're going to be covering the Detroit Pistons and the Denver Nuggets, a game that I'm super excited for. But let's start with this. Jaren Jackson Jr., John Conchar, Jock Landale, Vince Williams Jr. were traded to the Utah Jazz for Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 first-round picks. This gives the Memphis Grizzlies an incredible amount of first-round picks in the coming years, and basically signals that they are going to go through a complete rebuild. For Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., they now have got a collective of 7 first-round picks. In this trade, they're getting the most favorable of a 2027 first-round pick between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. They're getting the Lakers' 2027 pick and Phoenix's 2031 first-round pick. In total, I'm going to read all this because I want to make sure that I get it right. There's a ton of picks here, so just give me a second. They have their own first-round pick for the next 7 years. In 2026, they get the most favorable of Orlando and Phoenix. They get the 2027 top 4 protected from the Lakers. 2027 most favorable from Cleveland, Minnesota, or Utah. 2029 top 2 protected swap with Orlando. 2030 unprotected from Orlando. 2031 unprotected from Phoenix, and 6 second-round picks. So if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, you're going through a whole rebuild. I would not be shocked if we get some Ja Morant news here in the next couple days. It'll be interesting to see what the trade market looks like for him. But you had this roster for the Memphis Grizzlies that was a real Western Conference contender when you had Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and you felt like you had this great future. Well, then things started to fall apart, and I actually am very impressed by the Memphis Grizzlies' ability to say, hey, we're going to be self-aware of where we're at. We're not going to be a real contender with this current roster. Let's see what we can get out of some of these players. They got off of Desmond Bane in the offseason, and they're getting off of Jaren Jackson Jr. today, who's a very good defensive player. We'll see what the rest of the moves that the Memphis Grizzlies are going to make. We'll probably cover a little bit more of them, imagining that they're involved in more trades. But what I want to focus on a little bit more is the Utah Jazz. Obviously, they're bringing in Jaren Jackson Jr. to a lineup that has Walker Kessler at center and Lauri Markkanen as well. So it'll be interesting to see if the Utah Jazz, if they're going to stick with this lineup, you're talking about a very, very big, almost 3 7-footers on the court starting for the Utah Jazz. You have Keontae George. Will they move Ace Bailey to the 2? And then Lauri Markkanen, who has played the 3. He played it for the Cleveland Cavaliers and actually played it at a high level. From what I'm hearing, Lauri Markkanen is a big fan of this trade. He's averaging 27 points on the season. So, you want to keep your star happy. In the Utah Jazz, their record hasn't been very good, but they do have some good players. So you're going to have Walker Kessler at the 5, who's a good rebounder and a great defender. Jaren Jackson Jr., who is such a versatile defender, which I think will match well with a guy like Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler can mainly focus on the paint, but Jaren Jackson Jr. will have the ability to, he can really guard most positions on the court. He can switch. He's very versatile. He's not a very good rebounder, but I love kind of what the Utah Jazz are doing. And part of the reason is right now they're second in the NBA in scoring, second in points per game in the entire league. So you might ask yourself, why are they terrible? I think they're 15-30 as of today. Their defensive rating is dead last in the entire NBA. So you bring in Jaren Jackson Jr., who's a Defensive Player of the Year level defender, and you're really adding a ton to that lineup. allowing Keontae George to, focus on the offense, Ace Bailey continue to develop. But I love what this Utah Jazz lineup can look like. What's going to be interesting is right now, their pick for this season is only top 8 protected. So if they start to win basketball games and come out of that top 8, then they have to trade their first round pick for this season. So I would imagine that they try to find some way to continue to lose games this year, get one big draft pick, and feel like you're really going for it next year to turn that corner in Utah, because they have so many assets. And what I loved about the trade, the trade that I just brought up, they only gave up one of their own picks. And we know that the Utah Jazz had a ton of picks from the Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell trade. Speaking of Rudy Gobert, as of today, that trade is now officially final for the Utah Jazz. So they traded Rudy Gobert and got back in total Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler, and Keontae George, which is a pretty impressive haul for a player in Rudy Gobert that is not even significantly better than, maybe both of those big men in Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler, if better at all. So what a steal, what asset management by Danny Ainge to be able to not only gain all those assets, but use them for players that we like. And I would highly anticipate the Utah Jazz for next season really turning that corner and starting to become a competitive basketball team again in the Western Conference and fight for a playoff spot. We know that the West is deep and interesting, but we might start to see teams like the Clippers, the Warriors, the Lakers with some of their older players, LeBron, Steph, Kawhi, who knows what's going on with James Harden. Maybe some of those teams start to fall back. Can a team like the Utah Jazz take some of those spots? That's what we'll wait to see for next season. Moving on to the next trade, the Boston Celtics traded Anfernee Simons for Nikola Vucevic. I am a Boston Celtics fan, I will admit that, but I always try to do this from an unbiased perspective. At the moment, the Chicago Bulls have about as many point guards as you've ever seen in your life, or guards in general, I guess. They have Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo, they traded for Jay Ivey, Trey Jones. They traded for Mike Conley. Sounds like they may buy him out. And Anfernee Simons. So, and Buzelis is not like a huge player either, and he's one of their significant pieces. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the Chicago Bulls' plan is. Are they going to move Kobe White? That's some of the rumors that we're hearing. Could he get moved to a team like Houston? The Bulls get back some assets, or maybe one of the young forwards from the Houston Rockets. A lot of these trades are dependent on what the team, in this scenario, the Bulls, do with that asset going forward. Because when you're looking at it from the Boston Celtics perspective, what this tells me is they think that Jayson Tatum is coming back this season. So you bring in a guy like Nikola Vucevic. Sorry, I kind of struggle saying his name. He's averaging 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists. On the offensive end of the court, he is electric. He's a guy that I wanted the Celtics to trade for when he was coming out of Orlando, and obviously they didn't. On the defensive end of the court, not great. That's where he's struggles a little bit, but he is a good rebounder. And when you put him in an offensive system like Joe Mazzulla, I actually really like this move for the Boston Celtics as well. That's a team that looks at this Eastern Conference that has a very good Pistons team and a good Knicks team, and they're saying, we think we have a chance if Tatum can come back to compete this season. Both Simons and Vooch are expiring contracts, so there's a chance that neither of these guys are on those rosters next season. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but the Celtics would only make this trade for a big man if they think that they're going for it. And so that tells me that Jayson Tatum's coming back. Obviously, the guard play for the Celtics is still going to be pretty solid because Peyton Pritchard has had a really good season, and Derek White, we know that he's a very good point guard. They also have Baylor Shireman, who's been playing good, and Hugo Gonzalez, who's 19, who has shown some flashes. So they could also, if a guy like Mike Conley gets bought out, you could make a run for a guy like Mike Conley to add just a little veteran depth there, maybe to your guard position. But maybe you don't. Maybe you go with these young guys and see how you're able to compete. But then at your forwards, you obviously have Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Sam Hauser, Chris Boucher. In your big men, you've had Keita and Luka Garza at the big man position, but you're bringing in Nikola Vucevic, who can really stretch the floor, and I think will fit very nicely into that Joe Mazzulla system. It's all about how this defense will perform, but when you have Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum on the court, you have three very good defensive players, assuming Tatum comes back completely healthy on the court. Maybe they can cover up some of the issues that Vooch has in the post. All in all, an electric start to the trade deadline week. I can't wait to see what else is going to happen. Keep your phones on. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because we're going to be covering as much basketball content as we can. Appreciate y'all watching. Cyborg out.